On this episode of A State of Control, we look at the 2019 edition of Crestron Masters. Why do people come? What makes this a can't-miss event? And what should everybody be thinking about for the future? All that and more on A State of Control.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
A State of Control.
A State of Control, episode 57, Earth and Sky.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Crestron, industry-leading technology backed by world-class support.
Welcome to A State of Control, an AVNation podcast that highlights the control, programming, and automation aspects of the audiovisual industry. My name's Steve Greenblatt. I'm your host. Thanks for joining us today. So a few times a year, State of Control covers an event or industry news. If you're new to the show, we typically talk about evergreen topics and not necessarily things that are calendar based, but today is one of those few episodes that we're going to be talking about an event that happened a little bit around 2 weeks ago from this recording. And it was a gathering of over 1,000 AV professionals. It was affectionately called the Crestron Masters, which is the U.S. edition, and there is also an edition that is held overseas. In this year, I believe that it is in Spain. So with me to talk about this event are three people who not only attended, but were involved in actually delivering some of the content that was at the event. First off, I'd like to say hi to Dave Hatz. He's a regular here on the show, and we're glad for him to join us again on this one. Dave's from AVI Systems. Welcome, Dave.
Hey, thanks for having me, Steve. Looking forward to having a great conversation here.
Thanks. Glad you can make it. Next, I'd like to welcome Tom McLaughlin. He's from Doble Labs. He's new to the show, but he's somebody that I've gotten to know over years, both at Crestron events and other events like Infocom. And thanks for joining us today, Tom.
Thanks, Steve. I'm glad to join. I'm looking forward to some great conversation.
And last but not least, somebody that you probably know from their AVNation episodes, likely AV Week, but more importantly, he's a regular and a staple at all Crestron training events, and his name is Kevin Iselli from Crestron. Welcome, Kevin.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. So we, as I mentioned, this year's event of Crestron Masters was much bigger than years past. It also involved other aspects, not just in the past it would be a gathering of programmers. It's grown to include designers, and most recently to include technology managers. Dave, tell me a little bit about what makes Crestron Masters special, and what's the draw to make everybody come to it without a doubt every year?
So it really is probably one of the most important gatherings, certainly for our team at AVI. And it's really a few things that make it so. The first being that it really is a great opportunity for our programmers, our design engineers, to really not only learn just what Crestron has today and how it works and how to design, how to program for it, but also to really get a glimpse into the roadmap of where things are going. We've seen tremendous shift in our industry over the last decade, and that now is probably even more so than ever before. And so I think, having an opportunity for our teams to come and learn not just from instructors, but from, individuals like Tom and myself who are out there in the field and, have grown up with Crestron, but also, are, really, can share some of our war stories, share some of the real experiences with the products, is really valuable. Also, having the technology product managers, those at Crestron who are really, focused on designing both what we have today, but also what's coming next. I can't understate the importance of talking with that group, building relationships to help our team out, to help our design team out, both in terms of knowing what's coming, but also when we have problems or when there might be a product that's a gap that Crestron doesn't offer something, whether it's a feature or a product. There's times where we look, we sit around our table as a team and say, I wish we had a box that did this or a box that did that. And over the years, I can't tell you how many times, 3 months, 6 months after Masters, and all of a sudden, Crestron has a product announcement, either an enhancement or a new product that fills that gap.
Yeah.
That's really important.
Chime in to Dave. That's absolutely discussions that are happening. So the pain that the industry brings to Masters, the pain of the everyday troubles of using Crestron products, sort of gets underlined in the conversation during classes, so that when the technology managers are there, they hear that pain loud and clear, and that's a great stage to get your voice heard. As long as you come at it in a constructive fashion and you're sitting there talking with the guy that's doing the presenting and say, hey, how about this? So the course that me and my cohort here, Gary from Doble Laboratories, we taught, we had the engineer from Crestron there as well, and people would say, well, why didn't you do this or why didn't you do that? Well, of course, when you're a pioneer like Crestron is with their technology, you're going to do what everybody else does. You're going to learn as you go. There's nothing wrong with that as long as we keep pushing that ball forward. And Masters is that great stage for the end users or the people in this industry to say, hey, man, this really stinks. This would be a better way to do that. And maybe there's a good reason why they did X, Y, or Z. And a lot of times it's totally by design that it's done X, Y, and Z way. But the other thing is, hey, maybe there's a different way that somebody hasn't thought about. Collecting everybody together in that stage at Masters is literally the best part of Masters. You have people that are all veterans of the industry. You wouldn't have been Crestron certified if you weren't even in this industry for, less than 3 years? I mean, you have to be at least vested in for a couple, continuing education classes to even be eligible to take your master's certification at this point. So you have mostly industry veterans that can share good ideas or at least life experience ideas of better ways to push the envelope for our industry, and that's where Masters really sets up a great stage for that.
So Kevin, I'll bring you into the conversation from the other side. What value does Crestron get out of Masters? Obviously, I'm sure there's a certain amount of training that needs to be delivered to the audience and make sure that those using Crestron products are up to date and experienced and knowledgeable about the best ways of using them. But is it true that Crestron also gets a lot of value out of the feedback?
Oh, absolutely. Just to mirror what both Dave and Tom said, Masters for us is pinnacle, because as we get to hang out and spend time with the elite, if you will, or the pioneers and the folks that have been in with us and programming with us for all these years, the feedback is tremendous. And like, as Tom was saying, there's things that our TMs and the engineers do. For, let's say, make a decision for the benefit of the user experience, that sometimes doesn't always show up front, and why we made those decisions and how things work. This gives us a chance to kind of dive deep with you guys to explain these things and get your feedback on and see if there's any changes we can make, or as Dave said, a product we could develop to fill that gap. Because everybody wants us to make everything, and if you make everything, all of a sudden you don't know how to put pieces together because there's so many bits and pieces. So on the integration side, it's definitely, from a manufacturer's perspective, it is absolutely priceless. The 3 days that we get to spend with you guys, just to hear your thoughts, hear what your viewpoints of how the technology is used and how you want to use it and how you want to deploy it and what things we can do to make that easier for you. It's, like I said, it's priceless for us.
So, Tom, I'll come back to you. We talked about these conversations and the newer editions of Masters. We've been all going to this for quite some time. Have included other dynamics like designers and technology managers, as I mentioned in the open. How much value is there in having that type of community also present?
I think that's a big plus. The MTA program started last year, and we actually brought a couple of our guys that are in the engineering group. One of the themes of the panel discussion with Danny Forrester, who's from the architect perspective, is how it always gets lost in translation, the vision and what you're trying to sell as a solution versus just putting boxes. What box fixes X problem, as opposed to talking about an experience and end result. And it was almost comical because I was drawn to Danny to say, like, on my job sites, the architect is the one everybody's laughing at, saying, what was he thinking here and what was he thinking there? Because that vision never, ever gets articulated down to the end stages. And so when we start bringing in the design engineer type folks at Masters, they can hear from it that, some people subscribe to, I just program, but we all know that every guy who actually can write code is also doing 15 other things. They're making sure that the design is accurate. They're making sure that what was sold is even something feasible based on the dollars of the project. They're based on, they might be writing audio DSP stuff or all these other facets of the hat that you need to wear. You need to be able to take what that original vision for the solution all the way down to the end. So I think it's a big plus. And I will criticize and give kudos to Crestron and the fact that it's got to be there is a marketing element here, right? So the goal is to sell stuff. Crestron is a manufacturer. They sell stuff. They sell products that they make. And when you go to Masters, you get the back behind the scenes thing of why they sold it. Crestron has to be selfish as a manufacturer. When you're in charge of leading the industry like they do with so much innovation, you have to be you have to be selfish and say, well, we're going to do this product because we have some big customer that has a use case for it. But by the way, if the rest of the industry can harness that and sell it themselves, that's a good thing for Crestron. Well, the same thing applies to us as an integrator or to independent programmers. You have to figure out what your value add is in that equation. And just being the project manager, being the designer, being the programmer, those all go into what value add you offer to your company so that you can make more profits, obviously, but also to what you're helping the industry grow. So absolutely a good thing.
So Dave, I'll kind of jump over to you and not to put you on the spot, but what do you think, what do you think can be improved or where do you think that this event is going and how do you see more value being provided in something like this?
Sure. Well, I think, again, Tom and myself and even Kevin have both been, have all been going to this event for many, many years. And we've seen it evolve over those years. As in some of the very early sessions, we sit around today and still reminisce about how wonderful it was to have 30 people in a room and, 30 of the top industry people around the room. And, we really glamorize how great it was. And then we get all curmudgeon about how this event is, never going to be the same and all that. And some of that's true. But at the same time, there's a lot of great things that have really, evolved over the last few years with Masters. Bringing the MTA track on is one of them. We look at if we want to have the designs for us as programmers right, well, we need to elevate the education for the design community. I think, in the last few years we've seen it, and we're going to continue to see the options for depth of knowledge really continue to grow. This year, there really was a focus on creating content down at the 100 level for the individual who's new to Crestron or new to being certified, all the way up to the 500 level for that person who's an old hat at the basics, but really, still has, a lot of opportunity for growth. And I think that's going to continue to really be an emphasis because as we sit and reminisce about the old days of Masters, one of the things we always pick out, we'll pick out one topic that was the most meaningful class of our entire career 10 years ago. Well, I know Crestron, and talking with Rich Sasan and the team, they've really taken to heart that message is something that we need to find a way to give to every other attendee of Masters. And I've already heard it, so I don't need that class. But others who are newer to Crestron, they could still benefit from that. And so I think as the breadth of courses continues to grow, both horizontally and vertically, I think there's really a tremendous amount of opportunity to really to continue to strengthen, all the, every attendee's, personal learning plan, so that I'm not sitting in the same class I've had 5 years in a row. I'm having new content, but somebody who's new can get that class that I had last year, or that class that 5 years ago, that really was a fundamental building block of my understanding that I have now across the entire breadth of everything Crestron has.
So Kevin, kind of take us under the hood a little bit. Tell us what goes into planning this type of event, and also what goes into selecting some of the content that's provided.
A lot of darts and alcohol. It's a tremendously long process. I mean, we look at the state of what the industry is doing, what we're doing. Masters, of course, always being what we consider our continuing education for programmers. We need to, of course, keep up with material, new things that we're developing, not only from the control platform, but even from the product platforms. And how we can get those to market. The one thing that I want to say about the MTA this year, or these past 2 years, there was a goal, right? MTA, and where we were headed with this was to provide conduit, right? And that was between the folks that definitely, like Tom and Dave here, for example. These gentlemen have spent days, months, years of their time, not only in our classrooms and being exceptional that they are in the code world, but they also understand, as Tom was saying, they're also in part checking the design and making sure that the technology, how let's say the designer's intention is even a possibility. There's so often, because I came from the design community before I came to Crestron, I often refer to it now as television tech, right? Somebody watches something on TV that is completely fictitious, and next thing you know, there it is being described as a feature on a job set, and it's not really something that was really laid out as, here, this is what we could do with today's technology. We started the MTA as to kind of bridge that conduit between the designers and the guys like Dave and Tom that got to make it happen, and even you, Steve, because I know you're a coder. Like, when you look at some of these things that happen, you go, that's not even possible, right? How do we get that conversation even to start so that the designs can meet not only the expectations of the end user, but it can also be something that you as programmers and integrators can do effectively and efficiently, and not, make it such a trial and tribulation. But where are we going? We're going to try to continue to grow, obviously. I think you're going to see more communication between, designer community and program integration community. I've actually got a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks to discuss, let's say, parity of not only when you leave the CTI in-house environment, getting to masters, but even for the MTA groups, we're talking about how do we qualify and get a baseline experience so that everybody coming in can now have those conversations. So we're getting ready to do that. But to answer your question, it's a tremendous effort. We basically started doing write-ups, outlines, as well as topic discussions. We had those, 7 months ago, where we had just basic understandings of what the structure was going to be, where we were going to go, what the class contents were going to be, and then we started dividing them up into those as kind of Dave gave insight to, the 100, 200, all the way up to 500 level. And then we just, we kind of develop our teams, our SMEs, and get our technology managers, product line managers, all the engineers as, folks that we can then build the content and make sure that it's viable messaging for everyone.
Yeah, and just to add to what Kevin's saying, and back to Dave too, not every class is for everybody, and I get it that some people it's a refresh, or sometimes you get the exact same class again. I've heard, you hear in the networking conversations a lot of different takes on people's classes, and I know Dave puts a lot of effort into his class. Gary and I put a lot of effort into the class that we present. and you learn when you have to present. Obviously, you learn your subject matter really well, but every presenter at Masters sits down and says to themselves, what am I giving to my audience for their 90 minutes, or in the case of the double classes, 3.5 hours? What are they coming out of this with? And talking to Rich Sasson, the discussion is, well, try to teach to the middle of the class. Well, if you're in a 400 session or a 200 session, that's a hard target. Sometimes you got to start and just say, okay, look, I might be talking to you guys where I'm talking way below what you're at, but you may get a nugget of information that may save you some time, maybe not. We're going to spend 20 minutes going through that before I get into the meat and potatoes of things. And it just really, the goal as everybody presents is to try to get, every person in that class to take away something that'll save them time when they get out on the field with whatever that subject that you're presenting to. So, and we all, everybody puts a lot of effort into that. And I know, Kevin, you hearing about just like laying everything out, we're in the same boat. We're trying to get everybody the price they paid for. It's their time. And that's a big thing for everybody just to drop all their programmer guys. That's usually highly compensated employees. Some of these organizations, I know Doble, we have 5 people we send, plus we sent 2 MTAs. That's a lot of obligation or commitment that companies are putting towards that week spent. So we wouldn't do it if we weren't thinking that people were getting a lot out of their time.
Right.
Yeah, and that's honestly, Tom. Sorry, Dave. Well, that's one of the things on our topic of discussion for our meeting in a couple of weeks. Is that you're absolutely right. You always try to teach to the middle. The challenge with that is that is still a very diverse audience in a lot of cases. We want to kind of polish that experience out so that each one of those, let's say 100, 200, 300, 400, even 500 level classes, that the appropriate audience is there. I like to call it the first timers. If this is your first Masters, you have to do this track, right? You have to do these things. This gives you the opportunity, like, you guys that have been there for, since the impetus, that's stuff that you already have in your toolbox. You don't need to, spend the time there. Once we get that kind of shape and get that engine kind of moving, I think it'll just help us. It'll help you guys. It'll help everybody get the most out of the experience that is Masters moving forward as well.
Dave, you were going to say something?
Well, actually, I was going to ask Steve. I wanted to see, Steve, your perspective as a business owner. You manage a team of programmers. How do you justify having your entire staff basically off the books for, almost a week, to an event, to a specific manufacturer's event?
So it's a good question. Thanks for putting that out there. So what. An event like Crestron Masters has really become a lot more valuable and more of a more of a focus, let's say, to programmers on my team than something like Infocom. Let's say, this is where they can go be amongst their people and be involved in a community and gain from all the different ways that you guys explained. And every year we step back and we evaluate it. And of course, there's cost involved. And of course, we have to, more importantly, be upfront with our clients and let them know that we're going to have limited availability that week. Fortunately, I think as it's become an annual thing and as it's grown, it's been a little easier to deal with the unavailable side of it. The cost side of it, it's definitely tough, but you have to look at it and weigh the quality of what you're getting out of it versus what you're investing. And I think we try to do a debrief at the end of every Masters, and we say, what did we take away from this? What are we going to act upon, so that at least I can point to something and say we didn't just go there to have a good time, it's just cool too. But we definitely want to be able to say that these are some things that we learned, and what are we going to do with them moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we've done as a team too, is very similar to that. And, we don't sit down and say, okay, you have to go to this session, you have to go to that session. But we do sit down and try to go through afterwards of, okay, in the sessions, what did you learn, and share it with the group. Again, to get that knowledge out to a wider audience. And sure, after the event, the recordings of a lot of the sessions are made available, the presentations are made available. So there's even, further opportunity afterwards sometimes to pick up on some of the nuggets where you hear something was good and you missed. But I think that in my mind, that sharing the knowledge and, not just taking it and keeping it yourself, but really sharing it with your organization is one of the most valuable pieces of it. So.
And just to chime in, Doble just did ours today because we finally had all of our programmers available this morning. And we've noticed a little bit of a two-sided equation to when you're at Masters. There are simple Windows programmers classes that everybody in those classes are very centric on the old school way of programming versus the Sharp Pro. So because I taught, the only classes I took were Simple Sharp Pro and VC4, which are the you're going to be in a Visual Studio environment programming the whole time compared to the guys programming in simple Windows-based classes. It was really interesting to see the perspectives from both ranges. And, even the veteran guys at Crestron, I know some of the ATSG guys that have been there for years, they're in the same boat of getting ramped up. How much return on investment is it for us as a company to go to a simple Sharp Pro only world? Or, obviously we have, Doble has 20, 30 years of simple Windows programs literally running around there. How do you support that? How do you keep all those different sides of the world going and have it supported by all the people on your staff? It's a pretty big change. And it was interesting just to see the differences of the different classes that I took and taught versus the ones I was attending. It was just interesting.
So in the last few minutes that we have, I just wanted to get, and I'll start with you, Tom. You mentioned that you are instructing, and that's because you and Dave are at a diamond level, and that's one of the stipulations of becoming at the highest level of Crestron Masters programmer. What would you feel you would want to teach on next year if you had the full reign?
What I'd want to teach actually is this. I've taught the same course 2 years in a row, and it's evolving, and it's something that I'm now having a couple years under my belt with the subject material. I feel like I'm helping a little bit more. I taught some classes, and it was just like Rich always assigns you stuff that you know nothing about, and I think we're getting something going on the Crestron Certified Drivers program, and so I probably would want to teach that again. And I'm not fluent in some of the simple Sharp stuff that I would be good in. I would feel comfortable diving deep into that. But it's definitely something that, that's sort of the trial of when you're diamond, you have to do, if you got through platinum test and you got through the gold and silver test, presenting is a whole other fashion of a skill set that a programmer needs. Most people can program, but then when you get in front of a customer, can you articulate well? Can you do needs analysis? Do you have that other skill set? And I hear a lot of people talk about when you go to diamond, is it even worth doing? It's absolutely worth doing. I will say it's a fairly large time commitment. When you take a platinum test or gold test, it's a certain amount of hours that you have to put into it to get that level. But I definitely learn. And getting behind the scenes at Masters, being part of the diamond panel, seeing different perspective of the engineers is absolutely a plus for me as an individual. And I know Gary, who also is diamond at Doble, he gets a lot out of it too. So I would say Crestron Certified Drivers is a short answer.
That's great. Dave, same question to you.
I don't like the question at all because I want to teach it all. I mean, I love there's so many areas of it that, I think Tom hit the nail on the head that, when Rich is looking at, figuring out who's going to teach what class, for the diamond programmers, it really is a focus on what's a little outside your wheelhouse. This isn't just a shoe-in of, hey, go teach something off the cuff. It's to make us work. And it's a fun challenge, quite honestly, because it's what helps keep us in our skills honed. And so, I'm going to play the non-committal role on this one, and I'm going to say, I'll teach whatever they throw at me, big asterisks, unless it's too bad, and then I'm going to talk to Rich and say, hey, Rich, let's pare it down. But no, I look forward to any of it.
Kevin's taking notes here, just to let you know.
That's what I was afraid of. So,
and lastly, I'm going to wrap up with you, Kevin. One of the highlights I thought of Masters was learning about networking, and I know that was a focus of the instruction that you had, and one of the parts that you played in the event. Because I think that the way the industry is going, we've been talking about IT and AV, but we're really in it now, especially with NVX, and I'm sure it's going to be growing moving forward. How should programmers get themselves ready for this shift? And I know that you're also involved in doing some future training on the networking side that maybe you can share.
Yeah, so great point. Gosh, it was a couple of years ago. I was in Fred's office, Fred Bargetzi, and I was basically, we were talking about a class for NVX and how do we handle this merger onto IP video. And I kind of told him, I said, we really don't need a class on NVX. It's kind of a pretty set and forget technology. It's like everything you really need to know about NVX I can teach in a 10-minute video. I said, what I see more of, and what we're actually what we have documented, is the number of cases that are handled today, not only in ATSG but in Tier 2, is when it comes to NVX, it's well over 90% of it is about network configuration and making sure that environment's ready. So kind of to answer your question, or to make the statement, not quite a year ago, about 9 months ago, I got to go ahead to start up a new series of Crestron classes, which we call Crestron Network Solutions. Right. So what we're going to get ready to launch is what we call Crestron Network Solutions for design implementation. So if I'm in the consultant world, let's say our MTA track, we'll teach you kind of the components of a network, how those components go together, and what the Crestron technologies and what we offer, what you have to be mindful of when putting those network pieces together. Like, and some of it isn't even ours. For example, Dante, and how do I do Dante on a network, and make sure that I've got all my appropriations for that. Not only from the design aspect, but we'll go further in a moment. I'll explain. So Dante, if we're doing Flex, anything that's SIP, our Fusion, VC4, everything that's all network centric, including security, we're going to address those things and what a designer needs to know when designing a network and specifying a network for AV technology that we know today, and not even today, but tomorrow. From there, we'll take it a step further. We'll offer another course, which is CNSA. And in here, we're talking about the administration. Once you have this network design, or your designer's gone out and taken care of that environment for you, just like programming, these boxes don't come pre-configured to do all of those cool things, right? So like subnetting and VLAN segmentations and everything you need to do on the network, multicast settings, everything that the AV is going to require for, as we call it, good husbandry and healthy network communication. We're going to teach those things. So we're talking basically about a multi-day class that has nothing to do with Crestron. It's going to be completely focused on the network that you want survivability on. And then finally, from there, my third class in that arena is what we're calling the CNSE. So if you're familiar with DM, right, the whole DMC track that we made, I've kind of replicated that in a networking side. The last class, the CNSE, is going to take that skill set of network administration and then finish it off with troubleshooting once let's say the AV technology is present. So let's say to the programmer side, the A and the P, or the A and the E, would be a great opportunity to understand what you're doing, what the network requires to do that, and then how to troubleshoot when you push that button and the IR doesn't go squirt. How do we find out where that challenge is, and how do we debug it? So that's future coming for us. Like I said, I've got one of them. The first class is ready to go. We're just waiting for approvals from, of course, the man in the corner.
Excellent. Looking forward to that, and I'm sure that that's going to be something that'll be on the radar for a lot of programmers. So that'll do it for today for the show. I'd like to thank all the guests for joining us today. First, I'd like to start off with Dave Hatz from AVI Systems. Dave, how can people get in touch with you, learn more about what AVI is doing?
Best way to find is avisystems.com. You'll find details about what we offer as an integrator, as well as upcoming events we have coming up in May here. We've got 2 regional events, and then also we're going to be at InfoComm. So plan to come by and see us, see all the great things we've got going on at AVI. For myself, I lurk out on the Twitters occasionally, Dave Hatz AVI, on LinkedIn, but more importantly, just avisystems.com.
Thanks. Next, Kevin Iselli, thanks for being with us today. How can people get in touch with you and learn more about Crestron?
Thanks, Steve. I really appreciate it. Of course, Crestron.com, the website. You can reach me at Kiselli, that's Kiselli at Crestron.com. Please drop us a line. Let us know, how can we help you? I'm kind of on the Twitters at Crestron Kevin, but usually it's more of a hit me on an email or hit me on a text, and I'll be more than happy to jump in there.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Tom McLaughlin from Doble Labs. How can people get in touch with you, learn more about Doble?
All right. Our company website is just doble.com, and my email address is short and sweet because I've been here forever. It's just tom@doble.com. So feel free to give me a shout out anytime.
Thanks. I'm glad you were able to join us today. My name is Steve Greenblatt. I've been your host. I can be reached on social media at Steve Greenblatt, or my company, Control Concepts, be reached at controlconcepts.net. Most importantly, check out AVNation at avnation.tv to get more about this show and other shows that are in the lineup. And while you're at the website, be sure to check out the supporters who support this show and all the others. As Dave mentioned, InfoComm is around the corner by the time this is being published, so be sure to check out AVNation. There's going to be a tweet up on Wednesday, June 12th, and you can register for that at avnation.tv. Many of the hosts on AVNation will be there, as well as Tim Albright and probably everybody on this podcast, and we'd love to see you in person and say hi and hear your feedback on the show. I will be teaching a class at InfoComm on programming versus configuring. That might be an interest to this audience. It's going to be on Wednesday morning, I believe at 9:30. That's June 12th. So with that said, please leave us a review as well if you can, to let us know if there's anything that you want to hear from the show. And I couldn't have a State of Control show without having a shout out to Uncle Richie. He couldn't join us today, but he's on a well-deserved vacation and will be with us on the next one. So that'll do it for today for A State of Control.